good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it might be that you're tuning in and listening to this. Once again, I'm here with the Leadership Connection, and today I have a very special guest, Rob Kalwarowsky. Rob is from the Great White North up there in Alberta, Canada, and he's been in our industry for a number of years now, and one of those people that, boy, if you haven't seen Rob's Reliability Project, you are missing out. I'm going to tell you that right now. Always some great stuff out there. I see it on LinkedIn quite a bit, and I've had the pleasure of actually being interviewed and doing some podcast type stuff with Rob in the past, and so I'm excited to have him as a guest here today. How's it going, Rob?
No, great. It's great to have to join you, Doug. And yeah, you're right. Like if they want to hit the archives, I guess it's called Maintenance Disrupted now, but they hit the archives, they can find some good content from you. So they should check that out.
All right. So, Rob, tell me a bit about your past, where you may have gone to school, the companies that you've worked for, the jobs that you've had. Tell us a little bit about Rob.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been in the maintenance industry, I guess now for about 10 or 11 years. I went to MIT, mechanical engineering degree, minor in management. I started off my career in coal mining. I worked as a reliability engineer. Then I moved into a consulting role at Fluid Life as a senior reliability engineer, just doing a bunch of audits, both from the lubrication side. I was teaching some lubrication courses like MLA 1, 2, those type of things. And then also like seeing all the customers, really, like everything from mining, manufacturing, power plants, shipping vessels, like the whole whack across at least Canada and a little bit in the US. Now I work as an asset class manager at Enbridge. So I manage pipeline valves basically across, I mean, from all the way up to Fort McMurray to Houston, out to Sarnia, Ontario. So there's a huge portfolio there of like 20,000 valves or something. Yeah. So that's and yeah, I mean, and then I guess in the last, I don't know, year or so, I started my own company too, and so I'm doing stuff on the side. Like I do some consulting projects on the side, as well as I have like some leadership programs and that kind of stuff too.
Very good. Well, the MLT, MLA stuff, I have to say that, I took that course about, I want to say it was 3 years ago. And wow, what a level of respect I earned for lubrication practices by taking that course and passing the MLT. It was, I will tell you, I haven't had to study that hard in 40 years. It seemed like in between there, I had night school. It was like, holy smokes, wow, there's some intense stuff going on there. I was actually involved with early on with the CMRP before it actually even became the certification. We were putting together the test at SMRP and trying to make a test that was challenging. And I thought, well, this lube stuff, it can't be all that bad. It's just one piece of this of what you take for a CMRP. And I was like, holy moly, there's a lot of stuff to remember there. In fact, I didn't do myself any good by waiting until I was about 55 or 57. I can't remember how old I was to go take that. I just always said, I'm going to make sure if I'm in a position to like do an RCM, what are the lubrication tasks that ought to be done? I always say, apply lubrication best practices, for the test, determine correct type, amount, and frequency, that type of stuff, right? So you being an instructor in that says a lot right there to me, because to be able to instruct it, you got to know it inside and out.
There's a fair amount of chemistry there, but I mean, the biggest thing I think, and Doug, I think you come from the same realm of thought, at least when you teach RCM, it's like there's a lot of stuff in there that it's best practice, but when you actually go out into the field, you need to do it differently, because just like the logistics and the simplicity around it. And I take a very much a more practical approach in some aspects there. But that's another story for another day.
All right. So let me ask you, in terms of being a leader in this industry, there comes a point in your career where somebody recognizes you as a leader. And can you tell me what project were you working on? What company were you working for? Do you think when you were first recognized as a leader?
So it's going to be wild, right? Because it actually didn't happen through a job. It happened through the podcast. So it happened through Rob's Reliability Project. And like basically like throughout my career, even now, I either had a couple direct reports, they're not really many. And I never really thought myself as a leader, but I started working with a leadership coach about 15 months ago. And she really taught me what leadership actually is. And it's not just this aspect of, I have 100 direct reports, I'm the maintenance manager, I'm the site GM. It's more about how are you showing up? How are you impacting the people around you? How are you influencing the people around you to be better? And for me, like, Doug, like the content that I put out on a daily basis, it has been influencing the industry for at least a couple of years. And I think like that's really where people should be thinking about. And it's like us as reliability engineers or asset managers, a lot of the time you don't have direct reports, but you need to be able to influence and impact your team and the people around you, because otherwise you're ineffective.
Exactly. It's funny because when I go into a company and sit down and get ready to do RCM, as much information as I send out beforehand of this is what a good team looks like, you still will end up with people that when you look them in the eye and you start talking about what we're going to do, and you can see the defeat already on their face saying, okay, here I am, I'm being involved with the program of the month again, right? And I tell people, look, our job here is to make the impossible happen, right? Because nobody else around here believes that this is actually going to work, right? And they'll go, well, I can't believe you're saying that. I go, well, look, I once was that tradesperson, right? I once was that person sitting in the classroom going, yeah, this would be great if our managers would listen, blah, 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 blah. The stuff that goes on in the break room, And I say, I've also heard the conversations that if they would listen to us, things would work better here. This is your chance, right? This is your chance to do all this stuff. Everything we talk about this week is going to be your ideas, right? And that's really, your story relates to that. That's really what leadership is, inspiring people that they want to be successful. People want to be successful. And I'm thoroughly convinced of that. 90% of the people that come in to a job in the morning, they want to have a good day. They want to make change. They want to improve things, right? So you mentioned a mentor there quickly in that conversation. Are there a couple mentors that you'd like to talk about, and tell me about the things that they taught you?
Yeah, I mean, the first one would be Jeff Smith. He was my manager at Tech, and he taught me a lot about just like maintenance and reliability, best practices, and like fundamental aspects there. And then, yeah, like the next one is a leadership coach, Susan Hobson. So we co-host the Leadership Launchpad Project podcast now, and it's very much focused on this aspect of people-centric leadership. And it's exactly what you said, Doug, right? It's like people want to win every day, and they want to feel like they're winning. And it's a huge gap in industry right now. And it's like, you've written a book on RCM, like I've had a bunch of authors on my podcast over the years. And it's like best practices are fairly well understood, and yet we're not getting the results that we should get. We're not able to execute and implement results. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, I've asked this question on my podcast, and it's basically like, what's the gap? Like you understand the best practices. We've talked about it this whole episode. Like, what's the gap? What's holding us back from actually having success? And everyone basically said like culture and implementation. And for me, both of those boil down to leadership. And you see it, like I've seen it my entire career, right? And there's these aspects, like I would show up at a site to do an audit on reliability or lubrication practices, and the shop floor people know what need to change, right? They just hired a consultant to basically tell their manager what needs to change. And what that is just a lack of psychological safety, a lack of the ability for people to give feedback, to be heard, and for that cycle of continuous improvement to happen. And so learning more about stuff like growth mindset, about people-centric leadership, about psychological safety, like these are concepts that we need to implement, because that's what's holding us back right now.
Very cool. Jeff Smith, by the way, that is a person that I've crossed paths with several times through my career. Great guy. If you see him, tell him I said hello. Yeah, in terms of the people part of this business, that's really the enjoyable part for me. The other piece of leadership with that is finding the leaders in those groups, right? And lots of people haven't identified themselves as that. They may be that already within their crew, right? Like when you sit in that meeting, you'll hear the guys talk about one another, and after a couple hours, you go, okay, who's the leader in this room? You can pretty much figure it out just by the level of respect they show one another, right? Even though in maintenance terms, that's often jabs and teasing and picking on, and it's in the testing of the thin skin, is some people like to say. But it's getting those leaders, where their peers see them as that, getting them to step up so that their managers recognize them as that, right?
So, I love that. And that's my favorite leadership quote, actually. So my favorite leadership quote is from Simon Sinek. And he says, leadership is a choice, not a rank. And that's where I want to start people off, is if you're listening to this, and probably most of you don't consider yourself a leader if you're listening to this. You probably don't think that you can be a leader. Like I've heard some people come back to me and say, hey, Rob, like I'm an individual consultant. How can I be a leader? Like how is leadership training important to me? And it's like, well, you can go to site and lead your customer. You can teach them how to lead well. Like there's a lot of elements there. And I think that's the biggest key for me is start believing that you're a leader. Make the choice today, and it will change how you show up. It will change who you are. And like you've seen it in me, like once I started believing that I'm a leader, my content shifted from like maintenance and reliability best practices to leadership to mental health. And these like elements that people I think are missing in our industry. And that's where my impact has increased. Like if you want maintenance and reliability best practices, like Mobius does a ton of great work, right? Like Reliability Connect, CBM Connect, you can go to Ascendo. There's a bunch of content out there, but there isn't. I mean, I think I'm the first person to talk about mental health in our industry.
Yes, obviously. And congratulations for doing that. It's really something that's special. When I saw that you put that out there, it's really not only heartfelt, but it's something that's necessary, right? To talk about that and to educate people on the importance of recognizing it and dealing with it. It's a very tough issue, especially. It's one thing with your colleagues; it's another when it touches your family, right? It's trying, it's heartbreaking, and it's one of those things that people need to step up, recognize it, address it, and do their best to help others. Let me ask you, because this is kind of off subject of what we agreed to talk about, but what inspired you to do that? I mean, it is such an important thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it just made sense to me, Doug. Like I've struggled with depression, anxiety, PTSD for 10 years, basically. And like I've tried 15 different medications. Like I've tried a bunch of different therapies. I had a suicide attempt, like all these things. and it's like incredibly difficult to find help. And it's incredibly difficult to open up and ask for help. Like, it took me 9 months to ask for help the first time. And it's not just a me issue, right? Like, it's 20% of people, that's the quote unquote statistic, is 20% of people per year are affected by a mental health issue. 50% of people over their lifetime will be affected by a mental health issue. I think these are underreported because, again, right, you have to have the courage to ask for help to get part of that box. And I think for me, it just made sense. And if you look at the statistics, heavy industry, these male dominated macho industries are 2 to 3 times the national average for suicide. Like mining, oil and gas, construction, agriculture, fishing, all these things. And like, no one was talking about it. And I was like, well, why not me? Like, I can talk about it. And that was the biggest thing, is like, that to me is not like I'm not selling anything around mental health. Like, I mean, I guess you could hire me to speak, but I'm not trying to sell anything. What I'm trying to do is help people. And I think that's really where we want to be, is like, leadership is about impact and influence, and you can step up and and it doesn't have to be like work context. It doesn't have to make you money. It doesn't have to do these types of things. It's like, you can step up and care for the people around you. And like, since I started putting that content out, like, people from all around the world have reached out to me and said like, hey, I suffer too, thank you. And it's like, that kind of stuff is incredibly rewarding and incredibly, like, it builds so much connection that you never would have had.
So I have a son that struggles with it, and it is heartbreaking. And he is, by the way, he is in our world, our maintenance world, and he's a machine builder and a machine operator, and very, very bright kid. But boy, you know, the highs and lows are really a struggle. So yeah. Weaving this into what we do and the conversation that we're having, you talked a few minutes ago about the culture change, right? People, you recognize that it's a culture that needs to change, and depression fits right into that, right? Our culture and how we've dealt with it in the past, right, is we need people to step up. And that's really what changes the culture at work too, right? When you tell people, and I say, you look at that group and you say, okay, there's the guy that I believe is a leader. At some point in time, he and I are going to, or she and I are going to have a side conversation and say, this culture won't change until people step up, right? This culture won't change until we start using data to prove the things we know are right. And this culture, in terms of how we treat depression, won't change until people actually step up and have this conversation. So it's a fantastic thing. And it weaves right into, what are you most proud of your career at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, Doug, leadership and mental health are completely related. Like, my experience was, I saved a company over $30 million. I walked into my annual review and I was like, hey, like, this is the next step for me. Like, I'm going to get promoted. I'm getting raises. I'm going to be on the fast track. And like, basically the inverse happened, and you'll resonate with this, right? It's like, what happened was, you didn't save us that much money. We could never do anything better. We've always done it this way, right? And it's like, that takes away this ability from people to push the limits, to grow, to learn, to change. And I think that's what the biggest thing, like, there's a lot of things wrong with our industry, but I mean, like, the fixed mindset and these fear-based leadership cultures is really what's holding us back. And that's where those things are leading to the 70% disengagement. And then the mental health issues kind of stem from all of that. And I think, like, in terms of like, what am I most proud of? Like, I can tell you, like, I've saved companies over $100 million, doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. What I care about most was, I got this message. The first time I talked about mental health, I got a message from a guy out of Reno, Nevada. And he said, hey, I'm 55 years old. and I've tried everything. I was a Marine, I was a pastor, I'm a maintenance manager now, and I've tried all these therapies, I've had 3 divorces, all these things. And this podcast helped me. You talking about depression helped me. And that really is the thing I'm most proud of. Like the money, like saving people money, like, so what, right? Like, but what really matters is, and what I'm on a mission on now with both the leadership and the mental health aspect is, I want people to show up to work and be engaged and be happy and then take that home. Because that's really the big message here is like, if you're stepping up as a leader, you can lead at home, you can lead at work, you can lead at school, you can lead in your community, you can lead anywhere, and you can make people's lives better. It doesn't have to be just this aspect to grind out another 5% availability or grind out another $1 million of savings here or there. And I think that's the biggest piece. Like the 2 new podcasts that I have out, Leadership Launchpad Project and Dismantling High Performance Narrative, like these are where we're coming from. We're trying to bring real conversations, new conversations to the space and really change how we're doing business.
It's funny because I listen to you and I relate back to the things that my father told me, and he was a machinist and a journeyman, and then for a long time he was promoted to maintenance supervisor at I think the age of 30, and he worked from 30 to 53 in that job, and that was most of my the years of elementary, junior high, high school. He was doing that job, and I don't ever remember him talking about work ever, right? And then when I started at the same company, and just before I was married, I was still living at home and riding to work with him. And then all I'd hear was work, right? And I finally said to him one day, "You never used to talk about work." He goes, "Well, number one, I didn't think you'd ever understand. Number two, you got to learn to close your problems in the locker on the way out the door, right? What good would it be for me to come home and talk about all this crap at the dinner table?" And then I'm thinking to myself, after I'm going through this, is that really a good thing to do? Right? And did he have those issues? And then it just differences in people and how they deal with life, right? Those things.
And you can't cut it off, right?
Because he grew up in my home, right? So when I see him, I know he's either having a good day or he's having a bad day before he even says a word, right? And finding that person to talk to, and sometimes that's not dad, right? But you have to be able to talk about those things, and that was, I think, a recognition that you made. But coming back and making a circle into your career again, what are some of the books or courses that you took that had an influence? People are always interested in hearing about those things and saying, "Gee, what's next for me?" What are some of the things that you would say were influential in your career?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. I think, like, I told you this one when you were on my show, but I took RCM Blitz as one of the earliest courses I had. I took a course around, I think it was around like maintenance and reliability fundamentals with ARMS. I thought it was pretty good. But I think, like, to be honest, the biggest shift that I've had has been this leadership work that I've been on. And it's been transformative in a way. Like everything else, it adds to your skill set. And like I took the CRE and there was very math intensive background there. I've taken the CMRP, it gives you a view of the world. But I really think like if I'm out here challenging people, like, yes, there's technical skills that you need. Absolutely. Take, if you're going to run a vibration course, like you need, Cat 3, Cat 4 vibration. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I think what I want to challenge people to do is like start learning about like leadership, start learning about yourself, and start really kind of unlocking these questions. Because like what you said, Doug, right? It's like you cannot turn your work off. Like it's going to follow you home. Like I thought, hey man, like I could compartmentalize with the best of them. Like I had literally 3 lives. Like I had my work life, my home life, my podcast life, my sports life. Like it was all out there separate. And like I would keep people out of, like if you were in one, I wouldn't want you to come to the other. Like I kept you separate. But it doesn't work that way. Like our mood follows us, our beliefs follow us, like all these things follow us. And so you need it all to work together. And that's the biggest thing, right? Is like, and I'll ask you this question. It's like the first time my coach asked me this is like, who are you? I basically listed a bunch, like basically what I listed at the top of this episode. Okay, I worked at this job, I play water polo, I went to MIT, like all these things. And it's like, that's not who you are, that's your resume. And I think people don't necessarily know what values do they have, what drives them to get out of bed each morning. Like these are some questions that you need to answer to actually be happy. Because like not all your job's not going to light you up, but there are elements that you're going to enjoy and that you should lean into, and that's where people should be at.
That is an incredible piece of advice right there. I want to say that because most people would do exactly what you did, right? They talk about their resume, the things that they see themselves as being good at, right? As opposed to who are you, right? Are you a good dad? Are you a good husband? Are you a good friend? Are you loyal? Are you supportive? Right? Those are qualities that we should all seek to be better at. Interesting quote. So, looking at the future, what does the future hold for Rob?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like where I'm going, I'm sort of making a pivot in my career right now. And like I'm being trained as a leadership coach. And I guess on the back of that training course, like we offered the Leadership Launchpad Project program in the fall, and we'll be offering it twice this year. And like I'll be hosting it or coaching it or whatever you want to call it. But it's really going to help you lean into those questions, like who you are, what your values are, what type of leader you are. And then we're going to teach you stuff like growth mindset, psychological safety, how to build rapport, like these types of skills that, to be honest, I think are lacking in the workforce. But that's really where I'm going next. Like there's, like I'm going to be moving towards the leadership aspects of our industry. Obviously, the mental health stuff. I'm not charging for that, but like that's also where I'll be moving. I mean, I've already moved, I guess, but we'll be putting out more stuff in that aspects. And then, I mean, like, yeah, it's a huge passion for mine just because of where I've gone and what I've seen. And I just want people to, like, it comes back to that mission. Like, I want people to go to work and be engaged. I want people to feel like they're winning when they're working, not where we're at right now, where you walk around and people are just checked out. They're just punching the clock and like waiting for Friday afternoon.
Excellent. So I got to tell you, I've said right along to people, the technical stuff is easy. Anybody can do it. The leading piece is the piece that's the most satisfying. And I think there's a lot more people that can do that than that really haven't recognized that they have that ability, right? And it really comes down to those traits that you talk about. Who am I, right? And I think there are a lot of leaders out there. So, Rob, before we close here, what are some of the places that people can find you to find out more about Rob and more about the things that you're out there doing?
If you didn't find me already, there's not much hope for it. No, yeah, so I mean, for me, first off, you can check out my website, robsreliability.com. It's got the links to both podcasts on there. It's also got the leadership program outline and some of the other stuff I offer. Or you can just follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. So that's a good place to find me. And then also, yeah, like subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project podcast, subscribe to Dismantling the High Performance Narrative podcast. Both of those will come out each Monday. It will be a new episode. Obviously, the leadership one's about leadership. The other one's about mental health. So it might not be for you if you're not in that game, but I really just want to compel people, right? And it's what you said, Doug. It's not about seeing yourself as a leader and like needing that recognition to come from outside. It's about you making the choice. You can start to believe you're a leader today, and it will change you. It will change how you show up. It will change how you see the world, and it'll change what you do. And I think that's the biggest piece, is like, make that choice to be a leader today. Make the choice to care about the people to the left and to the right of you, to the above you in the organization, below you in the organization, at home, in your community, and really just lean into it. And like, start having those conversations, start making that change that you want to see in the world, and we'll make the world a better place for everybody.
All right. Rob, it's been fantastic talking to you today, and we are going to have to do this again in the future. Hopefully on a date when it's a little warmer up there. And
no, it's been a pleasure, Doug. I always love to chat with you, and yeah, like, absolutely, anytime you want me on, I'm available.
All right. This has been Doug Plucknett with my friend Rob Kalwarowsky. Have a great day. It's been the Leadership Connection, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.